It was a Monday morning, and we were sitting at the kitchen table after finishing breakfast. I sipped my coffee while flipping through the newspaper. Out of nowhere, my wife spoke up. "Brandon, could you put the newspaper down? I need to talk to you." I lowered the paper, and she delivered her bombshell. "I'm leaving you, Brandon. I want a divorce." Without much reaction, I asked, "Is that all?" As I picked up the newspaper again and flipped to the sports section. "I'm serious, Brandon," she pressed, frustration clear in her voice. Her insistence only amused me, so I continued to ignore her, which made her even more upset. "Damn it, Brandon, put the newspaper down and talk to me about this." I sighed and replied, "I've got nothing to say except goodbye. It's not much of a loss anyway. You haven't been a decent wife for over a year, so just go." Leaving her stunned, I set the newspaper aside, stood up, and went to my home office. From my desk, I grabbed a notebook and pen, pulled an envelope from a drawer, and returned to the kitchen. I jotted down a note on the top sheet of the notebook. "Samuel, thank you, thank you, thank you, and thank God she's leaving me." As I prepared to slip the note into the envelope, an idea struck me. I grabbed one of the lottery tickets I had bought the previous evening and added it to the envelope. Below the note, I added, "Maybe if you get lucky and win, it'll be enough to keep her satisfied so she won't cheat on you. Good luck, kid. You're going to need it." I signed it, "A very grateful Brandon," folded the note and placed it in the envelope. Sealing it, I handed it to Grace. "When you see him, give him this," I said. Her face was a mix of shock and disbelief. "You knew?" she asked, her voice shaky. "Just because you think I'm ignorant doesn't mean I actually am," I replied, snatching the envelope back. "On second thought, maybe I should mail it myself. I don't trust you not to open it, read it, and toss it away." Then, with a calm but firm tone, I continued, "Why don't you pack your things and leave? You need to be out of this house as soon as possible." "I'm not going anywhere," she shot back defiantly. "I'm not moving out just so you can bring your lover in." Ignoring her, I stood up, filled a travel mug with coffee, and left for work. On my way, I made a few key stops. First, I visited the bank, closed our savings and checking accounts, and emptied our safe deposit box. Next, I headed to a different bank closer to my office and opened new accounts under my name only. After that, I canceled all our joint credit cards and arranged for new ones to be issued in my name. Later that evening, after staying late at work, I went out for dinner and drinks with my executive assistant, Dana. During our conversation, I casually mentioned, "I'm back on the market, by the way. Is your sister still interested?" Dana laughed and shook her head. "To hell with my sister. If you're single again, I want to be first in line." Dana had been working with me for a decade, starting as a secretary and proving so invaluable that she was promoted to my executive assistant 2 years ago. I'd met her sister Tara once at a barbecue I hosted, and Dana had joked back then about Tara's crush on me. Now, Dana was saying she was interested, and I was caught off guard. "All right," I teased, "then Tara moves to second place, and you take first." "I'm not joking, boss," she said seriously. "I mean it." Her sincerity surprised me. But before I could respond, she asked about my wife. I explained, "She wants a divorce. She's leaving me for her lover." Dana's expression turned serious. "How long have you known?" "A year and a half," I admitted. "I found out almost as soon as it started." "How did you find out?" she asked, clearly intrigued. "A friend of mine saw her going into a motel with the guy and called me. I hired a private investigator to follow her for a week, and he got all the evidence I needed." "And you just let it go?" I shrugged. What was I supposed to do? Get angry and flip my life upside down? In this state, divorce is no fault. Everything would have been split 50-50. I'd have had to sell the house and divide the proceeds with her. That means losing the pool, the hot tub, my woodworking shop, and the 3-car garage. No thanks. I decided to let her stay, cook for me, clean, and do my laundry. It worked out fine. Dana looked at me, half in disbelief. "How could you stand being around her knowing she was cheating?" "You'd be surprised how quickly love can turn to hate, and hate to indifference," I replied. "Do you have any idea why she did it?" Dana asked. "No idea. But honestly, he probably wasn't the first." Dana raised her eyebrows. "You think she had other lovers?" "I can't know for sure," I admitted. "But there were 4 times in the 10 years we've been married when she acted differently. Like how she's been acting for the past year and a half since this affair began. Just a guess, but I'd bet those times were for the same reason. If she hadn't been caught and I hadn't been tipped off, I would have dismissed her behavior as just another one of those moods women sometimes get. Maybe I'm wrong, but it doesn't matter. I know for sure about this affair, and that's all I need to know. She's a cheater. What are you going to do now? Dana pressed. Wait, I said simply. Wait for what? To see what she does now that she's on her own. I've emptied the accounts, canceled her credit cards, and told her to get out of the house. She wanted the divorce, so it's on her now. Problem is, she doesn't earn enough to support herself and pay for a lawyer. She'll have to get the money from her lover, and I don't know if he'll give it to her. I assume they planned this together, but who knows? Dana leaned forward, her tone sharpening. You're thinking about this all wrong, Brandon. How so? If she files first, she's in control. You'll be served, and that could turn ugly. What if she claims mental or physical cruelty? What if she gets a restraining order, and the judge orders you to leave the house pending hearings? You need to take the lead, boss. Make her react to you, not the other way around. Her words made sense, but I hesitated. You think I should file? Absolutely. If you wait and her lover doesn't fund her, she might not file at all. That could put us in a bad position. Us? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Yes, us, Dana said firmly. What if we start something and she claims you were unfaithful too? You say she cheated and she'll say, so what? You did it too. If you file first, it's clear. From your perspective, the marriage is over. After that, what you do is none of her business. Legally, you'll still be married until the divorce is final, but no court will hold it against you if our relationship starts after the papers are filed. She leaned back, her eyes narrowing slightly. But if you wait for her to act, you're handing her the power. It could take years, or maybe just a week. Either way, you're at her mercy. If you file tomorrow, you could serve Grace by Thursday. That would give me the weekend to start winning you over. I smirked. Winning me over? Dead serious, Dana said. What's the point of being first in line if I don't take advantage of it? I sighed, knowing she was right. Pulling out my phone, I called Martin, my lawyer and friend since third grade. Martin practiced family law, or, as he jokingly called it, divorce law. When he answered, I got straight to the point. I need your help, Martin. Grace wants a divorce, and I want to file first. He expressed his sympathy, noting how he and his wife, Monica, were friends with both of us. Despite that, he assured me he'd handle everything. I'll draft the papers in the morning, he said. Come by at lunchtime to sign them, and we can grab lunch afterward. Before ending the call, I added, oh, and one more thing, I want a restraining order. Martin paused. A restraining order? Why? Feigning annoyance, I said, Grace told me her lover Samuel would straighten me out if I caused trouble. Martin laughed. Come on, Brandon, that's ridiculous. But fine, I'll file for it. Just so you know, there will be a hearing on the order within 10 days. I'm aware, I said confidently. I'll be ready for it. Dana smiled when I hung up. Looks like you're back in the driver's seat, boss. And she wasn't wrong. It was clear to me that the next big move was to get Grace out of the house and keep her out for as long as possible. We didn't have kids, so there wasn't any compelling reason for her to stay in the house during the divorce process. My strategy was simple. Possession is 9/10 of the law. As long as I stayed in the house, there wouldn't be much ground for a judge to order me out. That was my focus. I had told Grace to leave earlier that morning, but I had no idea what to expect when I got home. She could be gone, or she could still be there. Not willing to leave anything to chance, I decided I would serve her at work. Dana asked, Is there no chance you two could come to some agreement? None, I said flatly. Then I'll see you tomorrow, she said with a smile. When I got home that evening, Grace was still at the kitchen table, sifting through some papers. Why are you still here? I asked, heading to the fridge to grab a beer. This is my house too, she snapped. I'll stay here until I can make other arrangements. If you don't like my company, feel free to move out. Not a chance, I replied. Sit down, and let's discuss what we're going to do. There's nothing to discuss, she said coldly. I know what I'm going to do, and I don't care what you plan to do. There are things we need to work out, Brandon, she insisted. No, Grace, I shot back. There's nothing to work out. You want a divorce? Fine. Hire a lawyer, file the papers, and cover all the court costs. But know this. I'll fight you tooth and nail for everything. We live in a no-fault state, so everything gets split 50-50. I'll drag this out as long as possible to make sure your attorney's fees pile up. You want the coffee table? Well, guess what? I want it too. You want the couch? Too bad. It has sentimental value to me. Her frustration bubbled over. "Why are you suddenly making a big deal out of this? You didn't even show any emotion when I told you I wanted a divorce. You just told me to pack my things and leave." "That was before I had time to think," I said, locking eyes with her. "Then I decided to take a risk. I let you off the hook the first 3 times because you didn't want a divorce. I loved you enough to stay quiet and keep things together because you always came back to me." Her face stiffened, and she turned away when I mentioned the first 3 times. It was all the confirmation I needed. "I can't say why I stayed with you," I continued. "Maybe I thought I'd done something wrong, and you were trying to get back at me. Eventually your affairs ended, and I foolishly thought it was because you realized you loved me and wanted to come back. I thought this thing with Samuel was just another repeat of the past. But now I see I was wrong. You're just a cheater, Grace. If it hadn't been Samuel, it would have been someone else in 6 months or a year." I looked down and noticed the dirt on my shoes. At first, I wanted revenge. I wanted to grab a thick belt and beat you until you bled on the floor. But I realized that would land me in jail, and you're not worth it. So, instead, I'm going to make this divorce as difficult and expensive as possible for you. She stared at me, stunned, as I laid down the terms. "You're right. This is your home too. If you've decided to stay, I have no choice but to let you. But I don't have to like it, and I don't have to talk to you. Move your things into one of the spare bedrooms and stay the hell away from me." I finished my beer, went upstairs to the bedroom that used to be ours, and got ready for bed. As I lay there, I reflected on the confrontation. I had given her plenty to think about. She would need to discuss everything with Samuel and figure out her next steps. That would take time Martin could use to serve her with the divorce papers and secure the restraining order. The next morning, I left the house before Grace emerged from her room. I went to a small bed and breakfast cafe for breakfast and sipped my coffee while making a list of people to call once the papers were served. I wasn't about to let her paint me as the bad guy. I wanted to be the one who explained the situation to everyone first. At work, Dana seemed particularly upbeat. "I'm really looking forward to the weekend," she said with a smile. "Me too," I admitted, starting to feel some genuine excitement. At lunchtime, I met Martin at his office, signed the papers, and shared a meal with him. He assured me that he would head to the county building right after lunch to file the petition. The first step was finally underway. I told Martin, "Absolutely, serve her at work. 10 tomorrow sounds perfect. Call me the moment it's done. I want the locks changed before she can come back." After returning to the office, I arranged to take the next day off. Before leaving for the evening, I called a locksmith and scheduled a priority service. It cost extra, but I felt it was worth every penny. When I got home, Grace's car was in the driveway. However, she must have decided to stay in her room to avoid me because I didn't see her. I went straight to bed, planning to leave early the next morning before any potential confrontation. At the bed and breakfast cafe the next day, Caitlin, the waitress, approached me with a curious look. "Where's Grace? I always see you two together, but this is the second day in a row without her." "You won't see us together anymore. We're splitting up," I replied, keeping it brief. Caitlin nodded, placing the bill on the table. "My number's on the back. Not the restaurant's, mine." I was momentarily speechless as she walked away. 2 women in 2 days had shown interest, yet the one woman I'd chosen to marry couldn't be satisfied. The irony wasn't lost on me, but I knew I'd never ask Grace why I wasn't enough. After finishing my coffee and newspaper, I headed home once I knew Grace had likely left for work. I started packing up her belongings, moving them all to the garage. At 10:15, Martin called. "It's done. She's been served." "Thanks, Martin," I said, immediately calling the locksmith. He arrived within 20 minutes and got to work. By noon, the locks were changed, and I had peace of mind. I didn't have long to enjoy it, though. Less than an hour later, Grace's car sped into the driveway. She froze, staring at the wide-open garage door and the large cardboard sign I'd placed inside. "Grace, all your things are here in the garage." She stood there for a moment, glaring at the sign before marching up to the front door. Predictably, her keys no longer worked. After repeatedly ringing the doorbell and knocking, she eventually gave up and stormed back to the garage. I peeked out to see her grab a couple of bags and drive off. 2 minutes later, my phone rang. Grace's voice was sharp. "You're such an a-hole. Did you really have to embarrass me in front of my colleagues?" "It's better than letting you humiliate me in front of mine," I replied calmly. "What's with this restraining order nonsense?" she demanded. Feigning innocence, I said, "I was afraid you'd ask Samuel to come and straighten me out." You know why it's there. I need to get into the house to grab some things, she snapped. All your things are in the garage, Grace. I didn't change the garage door code, so your opener will still work. If there's something missing, make a list, and I'll move it for you. Stop being ridiculous, Brandon. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Sorry, Grace, I said, my tone icy. Causing you some inconvenience doesn't come close to paying back the years you tormented me, but I need to do something for my own sanity. Be grateful I didn't get violent. Goodbye. I hung up, then began making calls to everyone on my list. Most were shocked to hear about Grace's affair, though a couple of responses surprised me. One friend said, "Finally caught her, huh?" Another added, "I always thought you had an open marriage. She was always out with some guy, and you never mentioned it." I mentally crossed both of them off my friends list. Grace's parents took the news the hardest, insisting there must be some mistake. They had always treated me like the son they never had, but I wasn't about to let Grace twist the story and paint me as the bad guy. I made sure they heard the truth first. After finishing the calls, I gathered the last of Grace's things and made myself lunch. Just as I was cleaning up, the security company arrived. Trusting Grace about as far as I could throw her, I decided to install a full security system, complete with cameras. At work, Dana beamed. "Looks like everything's in place. Tomorrow night, dinner and dancing," she said with a grin. I returned her smile. "Looking forward to it." When I got home, Grace's car was back in the driveway. I knew she'd try something, and she didn't disappoint. She had broken into the house through the connecting door from the garage. The kitchen was a disaster. Plates and glasses were shattered across the floor. In the living room, several lamps had been smashed, but the piece de resistance was upstairs in my closet. My clothes were piled in a heap on the floor, and Grace had added her final insult in the most degrading way imaginable. All of Grace's actions were caught on security cameras, providing undeniable evidence of her violating the restraining order and behaving in a malicious, destructive manner. This footage became a crucial piece for the restraining order hearing. I informed Martin, who promptly contacted the police. They arrived, documented the scene, and took several photographs. The next day, Grace was arrested at her workplace and taken to jail. She was booked, photographed, and brought before a judge, charged with violating the restraining order and willfully damaging private property. To my surprise, the judge released her on her own recognizance after setting a hearing date. Despite the turmoil, my date with Dana turned out to be a delightful distraction. We enjoyed ourselves so much that we planned a second date for Saturday, which also went well. By Sunday, we were sharing a lovely picnic together. On Monday, the restraining order hearing took place. When the judge reviewed the security footage, he not only made the restraining order permanent, but also ordered Grace to compensate for the damaged items, pay for the dry cleaning of my clothes, and cover the cost of cleaning the bedroom. She was given 10 days to comply or risk jail time for contempt of court. To make things more satisfying, I hired the most expensive cleaning service I could find. To my disappointment, Grace managed to fulfill all the judge's demands in time, sparing herself a stint in jail. Over the next 2 weeks, Dana and I continued to see each other frequently. Although our kisses grew more passionate, we refrained from taking things further, as I was still legally married. Gradually, our relationship deepened, but we remained mindful of the situation. 6 months later, the divorce was finalized. It was a standard no-fault arrangement, with all assets divided equally. I refinanced the house and bought out Grace's share. Fortunately, I had been saving in a separate account for a surprise round-the-world trip that Grace had no knowledge of, so she didn't receive a penny from it. Similarly, 2 certificates of deposit I had secured with my bonus checks also remained undisclosed. One small victory came in the form of alimony. Grace was awarded 2 years of spousal support, or until she remarried, but the amount was set at $100 per week instead of the $500 she had sought. According to Martin, our luck with the judges assigned to my cases played a role. Both the restraining order and divorce hearings were presided over by judges who were cousins, each with personal experiences involving unfaithful spouses. While they upheld the law, they clearly didn't believe that a betrayed husband deserved undue punishment. Whatever Grace had with Samuel clearly fizzled out. 7 months after the divorce, she was back living with her parents. 8 months post-divorce, I found myself at a bar in the Hilton, enjoying a beer and a steak sandwich for lunch. That's when someone took the stool next to me and offered to buy me a beer. I turned to find myself face to face with none other than Grace's former lover. Curious, I invited him to elaborate. He signaled to the bartender, ordered 2 beers, and took a long sip before peeling at the bottle's label. A pile of shredded paper began to form as he finally broke the silence. "I didn't mean to mess things up for you," he said, still staring at the bottle. "The night I met her, she wasn't wearing a wedding ring, so I had no idea she was married. She definitely didn't act like it. She was out at Bud's bar with some coworkers, and when I asked her to dance, she said yes. I bought her a drink, and she invited me to sit with her and the others. We danced a few more times, and when I asked her out, she agreed. I fell for her quickly, and within a month, we were finding every opportunity to sleep together. At first, we used motels because I had roommates, and one of them was always around. She said she couldn't bring me to her place because she lived with her disabled mother. That explained why we couldn't meet often. She claimed she could only go out when someone was available to care for her mom. Eventually, I got my own apartment, and we didn't need motels anymore. Despite our irregular meetings, I was in love with her. I even started planning to propose. I wanted to buy a house for us and her mother. But just before I could, a guy I knew told me Grace was married and had a history of infidelity. It turned out that Grace had been unfaithful to me with Samuel's brother 2 years earlier. When her then-husband discovered the affair, he ended their marriage. At first, I found the claim hard to believe, but then I received a letter from Samuel that confirmed everything. After sitting with it for a week, I finally confronted Grace. She broke down in tears and spun a web of lies. She claimed she didn't love me and portrayed me as an abusive partner who mistreated her emotionally and physically. According to her, she hated me but was too afraid to leave, alleging that I had threatened to harm her and anyone she was with if she ever left. By then, I had already started investigating her accusations and discovered the truth. They were fabricated. Once I uncovered the facts, any thoughts of marrying her were out of the question. Still, I allowed her to stay with me for a time after we broke up, though it was clear we were no longer building a future together. Things seemed stable for a while, but after her divorce was finalized, she began talking about marriage again. That's when I knew it was time to part ways permanently. I come from a family where infidelity has caused deep wounds. My parents divorced because my mom cheated on my dad. My father got custody of me, and my mom remarried, only to repeat the same pattern. She married a third time, and history repeated itself again. I firmly believe in the saying, once a cheater, always a cheater. I made it clear to Grace that if she wanted anything beyond a casual arrangement, she was wasting her time. About 3 weeks later, I came home from work to find that she had left. Samuel took another sip of his beer and admitted, "There were rumors that I knew about your affair the whole time. People asked why I didn't divorce her immediately." I shrugged and said, "You said it yourself. She was very attentive and made life easier in many ways. I appreciated having someone to cook, clean, and take care of the household. Honestly, I might have kept things going if she hadn't started talking about leaving and wanting a divorce." Samuel nodded thoughtfully, then added, "I never thought I'd say this, especially to you, but I miss having her around." He finished his beer, stood up, and pulled something out of his pocket. He placed it on the counter and slid it toward me. Curious, I picked it up. "What's this?" I asked, surprised. "It's the lottery ticket you gave me," he replied. "It's a winner. This is your half." He handed me a cashier's check for a staggering amount of money. "I waited to give it to you so you wouldn't have to split it with her in the divorce. See you around," he said, before turning and walking away. Back at the office, my assistant Gavin noticed my expression and quipped, "You look like the cat that just ate the canary. Was lunch that good?" I smiled and replied, "Lunch was impressive." Gavin then remembered something and added with a grin, "Oh, right. Dana doesn't work for you anymore, huh?" "Not in the office," I said, smiling. "She's at home painting the room that's going to be the nursery for when the twins arrive." Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, comment, and hit that subscribe button for more of Love, Lust, Lies.